This is All India Radio. We now bring you a discussion on United Nations General Assembly adopts Indian resolution on multilingualism. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist.
United Nations General Assembly has adopted an India-sponsored resolution which mentions Hindi for the first time as a non-official language. This is a significant move because United Nations recognizes 6 official languages, and India since 2018 has been providing the extra budgetary support for the promotion of Hindi in its communication department's outreach for different programs worldwide. Ambassador Sajjanhar, this is a very significant development in democratizing the use of languages at the United Nations. We understand that the 6 languages that the UN practices as official languages that the old order, which barring the Chinese and the Arabic, represented the colonial powers.
The 6 languages basically are the languages of the victors of the Second World War, as a result of which the United Nations was created in 1945. So we have English, French, Russian, Spanish. These are the 4 languages, as you put it correctly, of the colonizers. And then Arabic and Chinese have also been added. These are the 6 official languages. Although in terms of working languages, they're basically English and French are used as the working languages of the United Nations. As you said again very correctly, that this is for the first time that Hindi has been mentioned in any of the resolutions at the United Nations. And this is by virtue of the hard work and efforts that have been put in by our permanent mission in New York. As you said, it is only since 2018, just about 4 years ago, that India launched a program titled Hindi at UN, because Hindi is a language that is spoken by such a large number of people around the world. But we have so far not taken much action or invested much effort in the use of this language by the United Nations. So it is only in 2018 that we started supporting this and putting in more effort towards this, and also contributing this. And I'm very happy that Hindi, along with Bangla and Urdu, the Indian languages, and of course the other languages also like Persian, Portuguese, Kiswahili that have been mentioned in this resolution, that these languages have been mentioned. And so this will be the activities and endeavors and discussions in the United Nations. They will be democratized and they will be spread much far and wide and be understood by a much larger cross-section of the global community.
Indeed, the Indian ambassador at the UN, T.S. Tirumurthy, has said that while moving the resolution, quote, multilingualism is recognized as a core value of the United Nations, unquote. He again added that it is the core facet of the Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations, which basically governs the functioning of the United Nations. Ambassador Sajjanhar, we have seen that the recognition of the Indian contribution in the activities of the United Nations have gone much in magnitude in the last few decades as peacekeeping force in the health services and so on, even in the food program. So how significant is the recognition of the Hindi and 2 other Indian languages in the activities of the United Nations worldwide?
I think the significance, the relevance, and the importance of India as far as the UN activities and UN work is concerned, that has been growing. There has been much greater focus that India has been putting on the functioning of the United Nations. You would recall that after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, Prime Minister Modi has been asking for a reformed multilateralism, because the world has to proceed in terms of dealing with the challenges that we have, whether it is the challenge of climate change, whether it is the challenge of terrorism, whether it is the challenge of health security as a result of the pandemics or economic recovery. The whole world has really to come together and work together. Unfortunately, that has not been happening because multilateralism has not been very effective. We have seen, even in the case of new war that has been going on since February of this year, there have been so many discussions that have been held in the UN Security Council, in the UN General General Assembly, but there has been no movement as far as this is concerned. So multilateralism has to be reformed, but still there is no other option than multilateralism with us. And India's role has been growing. India's role has been increasing. You would recall that when Prime Minister Modi went to address the UN General Assembly in September 2014, his first address as Prime Minister of India to the UN General Assembly, he had spoken about the fact that the United Nations should reflect the realities of the world today and not to reflect the realities of 1945 when it was established. Because at that time there were just 53 members of the United Nations. Today there are 193 members. And India's position and the position of a number of other countries has improved. So in that sense, India's role has been growing, but natural that the interest of the Indian people in knowing what is happening in the United Nations, what are the issues that are being discussed, what are the different countries, what are their positions that they are being taken. I think that becomes very important and very useful as far as the Indian public is concerned. So in that sense, I think the fact that there'll be greater dissemination of the programs and activities and discussions in the United Nations in Hindi language and in some of the other languages, I think it will go a very long way in promoting a better understanding, in promoting a better appreciation of the activities of the United Nations, the challenges it faces, and what it is doing to deal with those challenges. And in that context, I think the support of the Indian people, large number of the Indian community, that will be forthcoming if they are able to get this information and this knowledge in their own language. So I think it is very important, as Ambassador Tirumurti said, which you repeated, that multilingualism is one of the core values of the United Nations. And he also mentioned that in 1946, in fact, in the first meeting of the UN General Assembly, it was stated that the United Nations will work on a multilingual basis. Doesn't mean that the 6 official languages will not be given adequate importance. But in addition to the 6 official languages, the large number of other languages will also be used. And of course, it's a matter of great satisfaction that on the 10th of June in the discussions, in the resolution that has been passed, it was a resolution which was co-sponsored by India. It was co-sponsored by more than 80 other countries, that Hindi has been mentioned for the first time, and I think India can now look forward to more news items and reports emanating from the United Nations in New York in Hindi language.
We have seen that India has been very consistent in putting forth the argument that the United Nations should adopt reforms to reflect the current reality. And in the language diversity, it is taking a step. But as far as the P5 power is concerned, we still see that the United Nations remains embedded in the last century. And the democratization of power is not yet reflected there. Do you think this is a stepping stone in that direction, and we may see more opening up of the United Nations in the coming years?
Well, I would hope so, although I am not too sanguine about it. The reason for that is that all of this is really determined by the geopolitics. You would see that when India gave the clarion call for a reform of the World Health Organization, but there are such embedded vested interests as far as that aspect is concerned, that international body is concerned, that we have really not been able to see any significant change as far as that body is concerned. We also see as far as the World Trade Organization is concerned. We have ministerial meetings starting today in Geneva after a period of 5 years. But we have seen that all the reforms that had taken place, which had made that organization into a much more muscular, much more robust, much more effective organization, there were many of those provisions like the functioning of the dispute settlement system, they have been taken away. And we don't know what is going to happen as far as the discussions that are starting today is going to take place. And the most glaring example, of course, is the UN Security Council, because here the Security Council was established with 5 permanent members in 1945 with veto powers, and that continues to be the case, although many of those powers are definitely not such significant powers, either economically or politically or strategically or militarily. And there are many other powers, India included, which have grown. India today is the 3rd largest economy in purchasing power parity terms. We are about the 5th or the 6th largest in nominal dollar terms. The manner in which India has been able to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges, I don't think any other country has been able to deal with it so effectively. You would recall that even on the 24th of last month, when the Quad Summit was taking place in Tokyo, each and every member country there, they praised the manner in which India had been able to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, not only in terms of health issues, because we had one India-made vaccine, then we had another which was discovered in India and manufactured in India, and now we have such a large number of other vaccines also, but also our vaccination track record, also dealing with our economy. Today, India is, notwithstanding the headwinds as a result of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, India still continues to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. Yesterday, the World Bank report that came out, although it has brought down the GDP growth for this year, but it is still at an impressive 7.8% growth, which is again the highest for any major economy. So the point I'm making is that changes in these global bodies are determined by geopolitics. And India has been working very hard. As I mentioned, whenever Prime Minister Modi has gone to the UN General Assembly and addressed it, he has always spoken about the reform of the of the multilateral system. And in fact, the failures of the multilateral system are because they does not recognize the realities of today. And as you said, it is governed and guided by what was existed about more than 75 years ago. So I think this is a step in that direction, but it is a small baby step. We will need to continue our efforts with other like-minded countries. And I think a majority of the global community wants a reform in the multilateral system, but it is only a few naysayers who have been, and particularly in our own neighborhood, who have, like China, it has the veto power also. So they are the ones who have been standing in the way, who've been creating obstacles. And that is why it has not happened.
Coming back to the resolution at the UNGA on adoption of Hindi, do you think that the challenge is still there?
Basically, it will be more resources that we will have to invest in making realization of this decision. You know, as far as the multimedia possibilities are concerned, as far as translation is concerned, I think we have adequate facilities for that. But once we are able to put in place the necessary resources, we should be able to get that done. And I think the government is quite determined, because we've seen that it's not only Hindi, but it is the Indian culture, it is the Indian philosophy, it is the Indian values, whether it is Prime Minister Modi or it is the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar. They continue to promote and they continue to take it forward in all their global engagements, whether it is at the United Nations, their speeches at the United Nations, or at any of the other regional or intergovernmental fora. They speak for this better appreciation of the age-old philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the whole world is a family, and there is respect for all religions. So all these ideas and philosophies and values, that is sought to be promoted the world over, and I'm sure it can be done much more effectively.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sajjanhar.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on United Nations General Assembly adopts Indian resolution on multilingualism. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Manish, Anand, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official.